All right, should we get started? It's right just about 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So if everyone's ready, we're going to get started. Thanks so much for joining our first webinar on cannabis business and how to staff in a turbulent market. My name is Liesl Bernard. I'm the CEO and founder of CannabizTeam, and it's really exciting for us to have this webinar today. I'd like for some of you to please share where you're joining us in the chat. Would love to know where you're dialing in from. And also, if you want to share your LinkedIn profile, we would love some questions at the end and would love to answer those. So please add that too when you have a moment. So let's talk a little bit about turbulent times in the cannabis industry. You know, I think we all understand the growing pains that the industry is going through. But it is not all doom and gloom, right? There are tons of new jobs in the industry being created every day. And if you look at the new states that have just legalized, there's a ton of hiring going on in those states. Just on Indeed alone, there's about 40,000 jobs in the cannabis industry that are still being posted. So a ton of growth, and the industry is set to double in the next 5 years. So exciting times ahead for the industry. So today we're going to talk about how to staff smart during turbulent times. And that means using both direct hire, temporary staffing, and also fractional executives to have the best team in place and to make it as efficient and cost effective as possible. So what is flexible staffing and what are the benefits of flexible staffing? It is, Jess, if you want to go to the next slide, that would be great. So flexible staffing offers affordability, flexibility, agility, and also assurance. Assurance that, you know, you're using staff that have been vetted, that have the right badging, have been reference checks, and also background checks done. So you have a workforce that you can rely on and feel very confident about. And also have the flexibility to scale up and down. You know, if you have a busy time period where you need additional temp staff to get production out or cultivation, that's an option, and you don't have to hire full-time for that. Obviously, with the flexible staffing, it allows for affordability. And we're going to talk later today about fractional executives and how a lot of cannabis companies now are using fractional executives to get specific and very focused talent on a sort of part-time basis, but full-time. So you have access to executive talent and their expertise without having to hire full-time on your salary. So more to come in that. So very, very exciting webinar that we've put together for you guys, and hopefully that'll be very beneficial. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ben Carley, who is our Director of Temp Staffing, to talk more about temporary options. Thanks, Ben.
Great. Thanks, Liesl. And just as a reminder as well, as we go through this webinar, be sure to post any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those at the conclusion. So I'm going to dive into a little bit of some of the differences between temporary staff, consultants, and fractional executives. So as we navigate the ever-evolving landscape of the cannabis industry, it is really important to understand when and how these resources can be harnessed to drive success, innovation, and growth within our companies. So we can begin by exploring the realm of temporary staff. So due to rapid changes and fluctuating demands, temporary staff can be an important tool for businesses seeking to optimize their workforce dynamics. So temporary staff can come into play during short-term projects. It could be seasonal rushes, sudden urges in workload, and they can bring a sense of agility and adaptability to organizations, enabling them to respond swiftly to changing circumstances without the commitment of bringing on permanent hires. So when should companies consider tapping into the power of temporary staffing? So these can be seasonal peaks, so retail, hospitality, and agriculture, and more specifically in cannabis, temporary staff can seamlessly kind of fill the gaps during these seasonal peaks and during those busy periods. It could be for project-based initiatives, so whether that's IT upgrades or marketing campaigns, companies often undertake projects that demand specific skills for finite duration, and temporary staff can really be brought on board to lend their expertise without kind of disrupting the existing workforce. There can be unexpected workload spikes. So businesses occasionally encounter unforeseen spikes in demand due to events such as product launches or industry shifts. And temporary staff can really help those companies navigate those surges without overburdening their core teams that they have in place already. There also can be some flexibility in uncertainty. So in uncertain economic times, or even when facing unforeseen challenges, temporary staff provides a solution that allows companies to maintain their operations while conserving resources and retaining flexibility. We can now kind of transition into the realm of consultants, where we find a large amount of specialized knowledge and experience that can significantly elevate a company's trajectory. So consultants offer a fresh perspective, strategic insights, and expertise tailored to specific challenges. They're adept at deciphering complexities, providing solutions, and often offering a bridge to new opportunities. So when does it make sense for companies to engage with consultants? And these can be, navigating regulatory complexities. So healthcare industry, the finance industry, and the cannabis sector all kind of grapple with intricate regulations in their fields. And consultants that are well versed in these domains and can guide companies through the maze of compliance, minimizing risk and maximizing opportunities. There can be specialized skill gaps. So in the pursuit of innovation, companies may require expertise in certain areas that their current workforce lacks, and consultants can really offer deep insights and bridge those skill gaps, enabling companies to stay ahead of competitive landscapes. There could be periods of change management and transformation. So this can be during mergers and acquisitions or during a major corporate restructuring. And consultants can facilitate kind of a smooth transition, ensuring that minimal disruption and maximum employee engagement are occurring. And lastly, we can kind of explore the realm of fractional executives. So in this sector, this is really a concept that marries executive level leadership with flexibility. So fractional executives really bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table without having a full-time commitment, making them a valuable resource in steering companies towards success. So when should companies consider bringing in fractional executives? These can be times of strategic vision and leadership. So fractional executives, they're often experienced leaders in their fields, can inject a fresh perspective and strategic vision into companies. The company could have a temporary leadership need where they might find themselves in need of an interim leadership due to a sudden departure or sabbatical or transition. And fractional executives can kind of step in and provide stability and continuity during these periods. They also offer cost-effective solutions. A lot of times bringing on a full-time C-suite executive can be very financially burdensome, especially for smaller companies. So fractional executives offer access to top-tier leadership without having those overhead costs. And also there's expertise for growth. So in conclusion, the strategic use of temporary staff and consultants and fractional executives is really a powerful arsenal at the disposal of modern businesses in the cannabis industry. And as we navigate the complexities of our rapidly evolving world, these resources offer us agility, affordability, flexibility, and assurance, as Liesl mentioned before, allowing us to thrive in the face of challenges and capitalize on all these opportunities. And then in the next slide here, I'm just going to give a quick walkthrough of some of the examples of some flexible jobs within the temporary staff, consultant, and fractional executive sectors. And later, John's going to go over a little bit about when these positions can be utilized and implemented to suit the company's needs. So within the temporary staff sector, where we have more entry-level roles for a set period of time, these can be positions such as harvest assistants, trimmers, packaging specialists, event staffs for any kind of like promotional events and trade shows and product launches. Could just be bud tender coverage for peak seasons within the actual retail sector. And on the consultant side, we have more senior level roles, which will be a little bit more specific expertise for specific projects and ongoing support. And these can be consultants within compliance, cultivation, marketing and branding, as well as finance and supply chain. And then lastly, within fractional executives, this is going to be basically VP level through C-suite support roles for fractional support in order to optimize processes and strategies and planning. And these would be positions such as like Chief Financial Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Operations Officer, Compliance Officer, and Chief Innovation Officers. So now I'm going to pass it over to John, and he's going to speak a little bit about more on the why and the how of flexible staffing in the cannabis industry.
Thank you, Ben, and welcome everybody. I'm going to address some of the top reasons why companies choose flexible staffing in turbulent markets. So, flexible staffing really offers dual benefits. You have cost effectiveness, and you also have rapid assistance. This enables companies to tap into skilled professionals quickly and to reduce expenses. So a cost advantage example would be, rather than maintaining fully burdened W-2 employees, flexible staffing minimizes overhead. It cuts insurance and payroll tax expenses. And it can also ensure, if you control your employees very well, it can ensure that you don't have additional overtime costs. As we all know, demand fluctuates, and employers who embrace this cost efficiency only pay for labor during peak periods, and they sidestep any unnecessary expenditures during slower phases. And that brings me to my second topic, which is really the timing and the scalability. And the timing advantage is very important. While it takes as many as 30 to 45 days to onboard a permanent employee, flexible staff can be on your site within 1 to 2 days. Huge advantage. And this agility is especially crucial for addressing fluctuating demands. You might have a harvest and cultivation period, or in a manufacturing environment, and many times our clients come to us and they need to fill a large production order, and we parachute in temporary and flexible staffing to help them out. Scalability is another reason. You can quickly adjust your workforce size and it'll match the fluctuating demands without the constraints of the permanent hire. Again, no long-term fixed cost expenses of a W-2 employee. We're in an industry that experiences fluctuating demand, no doubt about it. Seasonal patterns, you can benefit now from the nimble aspect of flexible staffing and make sure that you're allocating your resources appropriately. And I think the third most important reason here is really the pre-employment evaluation, or what I like to call try before you buy. This is very important. A lot of employers use flexible staffing to evaluate their employees' performance and cultural alignment before making a full-time commitment. So for the performance evaluation, you have a first-hand assessment of an employee's capabilities and their contributions, and then determining a fit, and it's really the culture fit that we're talking about. Evaluating how well a candidate aligns with your organization's cultures and values and really team dynamics before considering them for permanent roles. Again, try before you buy. I think it's very important. So, incorporating flexible staffing solutions in your organization, it really allows you to optimize costs. You can streamline your operations. It'll foster a dynamic and agile workforce. And these are all necessary, as we know, to maintain that competitive advantage in a turbulent and this crazy, ever-changing cannabis industry. So with that being said, I'd like to pass it off now to Danielle, and she'll discuss some of the misconceptions that you might associate with flexible staffing. So Danielle?
Thank you so much, John. And for everybody tuning in, please post any questions that you have in the chat. We do have that Q&A in the end, and we'd love to hear from you. So talking about the misconceptions, I think that there is a lot when it comes to recruitment in general, but pricing specifically is a big topic of discussion. When people think about staffing agencies or recruitment companies, their minds typically go to either direct hire, temporary, and big bills. In reality, there is a spectrum of staffing types and a variety of payment options. So being that pricing is one of the biggest misconceptions, flexible staffing is a way to cut those overhead costs for your hired staff and instead create that blended workforce that everybody keeps talking about, basically meeting your needs at any given point. Flexible staff, they don't require benefit packages, unemployment, and they also help regulate overtime cost. So next time you're thinking about doing a full-time hire versus flexible, ask yourself the following questions. 1, what are my full-time staff numbers versus the amount of temporary staff we have? 2, does the cost of a full-time hire's base salary, workers' comp, taxes, benefits, onboarding, all of that, does it make sense for the role that you are hiring for? Or is this a long-term position? Is the duration unknown, or do we only need help for the short term? So really the complexities of that role is really what we're going to be paying attention to. And finally, are you going to be able to afford the fall off of that full-time employee if they do not work out? Because the cost of a bad hire is more detrimental than people think. So moving on to the next slide. There we go. So we have some very interesting statistics based on national data points. The average cost of a single bad hire can be $14,900. Hiring for any company in and out of cannabis is a costly task as is, but cannabis, our funds are slim and time is literally money. So you hire somebody, you put an average of $4,000 into their training, into their onboarding, and they are not the right fit. It then takes an average of 10 weeks to terminate that bad hire and another 6 weeks to replace them. So much time and so much money lost when we could have avoided all of this. And on top of it, turnover within the industry is much larger than any other industry. According to the National Cannabis Industry Association, it's actually between 40 to 60% in a person's first 2 months. So I challenge you all to sit down with your internal team and figure out what your numbers look like for your internal turnover, for how much you're spending on potential bad hires, because it could really be an absurd amount of both time and money when you do recruit internally. So flexible staffing, not coming with that overhead, not coming with that full-time commitment, really gives you that chance to try before you buy and really test a candidate's experience, their dedication to the position, and the way they culturally fit into your organization. The last thing we want to see as recruiters is you waste time and money on that bad hire, and we see it happen more often than not. So this is where our quality and our expertise with over 7 years in the staffing industry can really come into play. We can save on your recruitment costs, your over operating expenses. And again, we have this knowledge. We are the experts. We've been around since 2016, so we can really help identify those needs, those gaps that you're looking for, and come up with that strategy to help place the right quality people. So with that said, I would love to introduce our guest speaker, Brian Moskin. Brian has been in the cannabis industry for years and has worn about every single hat that you can think of. So Brian, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks so much, Danielle, and everybody from CannabizTeam. Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Moskin, and I'm a fractional executive consultant. I've been working in the cannabis industry for the last 8 years, up and down the supply chain, from cultivation to retail, manufacturing to marketing, and from California to Massachusetts to now Florida. First thing I'd like to do here is just pretty much explain and define the term fractional executive. So fractional implies just that, a fraction of employment, participation, support, ownership, etc. A fractional CFO, for example, could work 1 or 2 hours a day, or 1 or 2 days a week, or some other specified agreed upon arrangement that makes sense based on where the business is at currently. So for that employer, they'd only be paying a rate relative to the executive's fractional participation. This offers the ability for companies to gain fresh, high-level direction and insights needed from experienced professionals immediately without all the onboarding delays. as has been discussed already. So some of the companies where I'm currently a fractional executive are Baked, which is an international cannabis events and marketing firm based here in Florida. I started as a fractional operations consultant with them, which I turned ultimately into an equal partner, because it just made sense as time was going on and a lot of our interests aligned. C-Lab, which is another company here in Florida, which stands for Cannabis Law, Accounting, and Business. It's the Cannabis Trade Association here in Florida, where I'm currently serving as a fractional COO, resetting and expanding operations for the entire organization, with the possibility of even future equity as milestones are achieved. And another company is Quantum Leaf, a full suite ERP software platform used to run entire cannabis business operations from start to finish. Where I started there was as a full-time consultant and actually transformed that role into a remote fractional VP of sales, marketing, and implementation. So the reason why fractional executives and temporary staff are great for the cannabis industry is because this industry is so new. So cannabis companies need to be agile, they need to be flexible, they can't be weighed down. They already have enough weight in terms of regulation and things they have to follow financially. So they need guidance from experienced professionals who not only have the insights from years of work in their departments, but also have the high level skills to manage teams, communicate ideas, and or redirect an entire company away from pitfalls and towards meaningful, sustainable success. The last point I'll leave you with is that fractional executives, consultants, temporary staff, they're available in every vertical, and rightfully so. There's experts in every department, from planting seeds to harvesting, from trimming to packaging, distribution to retail design, and everything in between. So I think cannabis companies really serve themselves best these days in a turbulent market. Cannabis is always kind of going to be a turbulent market, at least for the foreseeable 10 years. I think they can really serve themselves by staying lean, flexible, consistent in what they're doing as a company, and open-minded, specifically when it comes to new ways of doing business, new unique ways of doing business. So fractional executive consulting is one newer, unique version of support, in addition to more standard temporary support and higher level consulting support, as has already been discussed. So thanks for listening, guys. I'll pass it back to the Cannabis team now, and they'll continue on.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Brian. I truly appreciate your expertise and just all the insight on the options out there in fluctuating staffing. I'm Liz I'm from Baltimore, so I reside on the East Coast. A lot of our teams on the West Coast, so we're all over and spread out. But one question, that we ask is kind of what time of the year is flexible staffing used the most? And that time of the year actually varies. So if you want to go with the most common, we can talk about cultivation, right? So you have your outdoor grows, which are very specific times of when they need people or extra people on hand. During the year, it's a specific time for trimmers, lollipopping, cutting, etc., because all that is important to get the best product out there. But, if you switch over to indoor greenhouse grows, that is more consistent. It is not, just a set time during the year. You have multiple times where you're harvesting, if you're a very successful grow, that is. So, that can vary. But then there also are some other options that people don't think of when it comes to fluctuating staffing, part-time or temporary or fractional consultants. So I would love for you to kind of, as I'm asking these questions, think, have I ever dealt with this situation with my team? So first one is, have you ever had someone go on vacation during busy season? I know for me and for our team, it's very important for our team to be able to spend time with their family when needed. And sometimes those family vacations can end up on the worst time in our schedule for work. So having the ability to have that fluctuating staff or temporary person step in when that person is taking that much needed time with their family is so important. Have you ever needed extra accounting assistance. Let's think about that. We all know cannabis accounting is probably the biggest thorn in everybody's side, and very tough. So making sure that you get all of your stuff in before the end of the year is detrimental to keeping your company keep going. So do you need extra assistance then? Have you ever had, let's just say, because I've dealt with this, an HR manager go on maternity leave that's going to be out for a few months? And that person really is the pulse of the culture and the talent acquisition, et cetera. Having someone step in during those few months to make sure you're not overworking the rest of the team could be really important. Have you ever had a big project or event that you could need extra support for sales or marketing people? So we all know it's not cheap to be a part of these events. You pay a fee to have a table, etc. Are you putting all of your money on that table? Are you getting as many people out there, some extra brand ambassadors, whatever you need to make sure your company, your products out there to get as many touches and the assistance and what you're looking for from that event? And then lastly, when it starts, when you're thinking about the fluctuating staffing needs, one of the biggest reasons you could come on board, just like Brian, is when you're just starting, you could really utilize an expert in cannabis when it comes to compliance, regulatory stuff, legal, anything, like getting all of your paperwork in time. When you have someone leading your charge, making sure everything's going in the right direction, those delays are much less and much less severe to your team and your start date by having that expertise, for you. And I know a lot of times it's very hard. Cannabis, we're all operating on thin lines. It's very hard to bring in someone full-time, like we said. So this allows you to keep that runway that you have for your team and build upon that runway by adding an awesome expert to your team. So I bet, one of these questions you've asked yourself throughout the history of working, and you've dealt with this situation and the stress that it can add to your team. But that's where the flexible staffing can really help. You can take away that extra burden on your team. Keep your team where it is. Don't overwork them. Don't get your overtime out of control. Have those experts come in and really rock what you need for them. And lastly, with this slide, I just want to say, if you want access to an amazing talent like Brian, like all of our fractional consultants that we have on board, please reach out to somebody on our team. We would love to be that go-go gadget arm, as I say, for your team. And for the last slide before our Q&A section, so please make sure you get that in the chat. The big question is flexible staffing here to stay? And I'm going to say yes. The answer is an absolute yes, because 14.5 million temporary and contract employees are currently in the US. And honestly, the government probably uses most of them. So that's something that they've learned very early that can help them stay where they need. 88% of employers would increase temporary or fractional workers just to stay competitive in the market. And then, like Brian, you can see 79% of freelance workers or fractional consultants are in a blended workforce. So they have their hands in different pots, and we have access to all of them. So I truly appreciate you guys being here today. And excuse me, sorry, I have a frog in my throat. And I am really excited to pass it to Kristen to answer some great questions and see what you guys are looking to know more about the fractional consultant and fluctuating staffing. Thank you so much, Kristen.
Thank you, Liz, very much. We have now reached our Q&A portion of the webinar. We're going to answer any questions that you might have posted in the chat. Continue to put those over there. And if you have more that we can't answer today or you think of something later, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Also, if you are looking for any staffing needs yourself or have questions about our services, that website, or I'm sorry, email address that you can contact is contact@CannabizTeam.com. So the first question that I wanted to pose, really, I'm going to send this over to Liesl, our CEO, and wanted to just know that how long can a temporary worker be employed with a staffing agency before they have to be converted over to an employer? Or is there a maximum amount that they can be at a company as a temporary employee?
That's a great question, Kristen. And a lot of our clients ask that, and the great thing about temporary workers is can be as short or as long as you need. We have some clients that just need help for a couple of days. But there's also clients that have temporary workers that last up until a year or more. So it's really flexible and it really depends on the client needs. We have a great program that, if you use a temporary worker for an extended period of time, you can actually convert them for free after a certain number of hours. So the longer they work, the less expensive it is to convert them to a full-time employee. So conversion rates go down. But again, it could be as little as 1 day to a couple of years. So it's super flexible, and we try to really, adapt to our clients' needs as much as possible.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was very helpful. I want to shoot the next question over to Brian. Can you tell us the difference between fractional and interim executives?
Sure. Well, fractional, as I had just described a little earlier, is fractional participation or fractional support or fractional employment or ownership, etc. Interim implies temporary. So an interim CMO, for example, is an executive temporarily filling in the role for a predetermined or undetermined period of time, but with the explicit intention that they're eventually going to pass that role off to somebody. So interim means, from the beginning, they know they're not going to stay there. They're there for a support role real quick, but they might be lining something up while the company looks for a full-time candidate that they're happy with and then transitions them in. Fractional, again, could be determined, predetermined or not, but is not a situation where the person is coming in specifically to transition out of that role. They're just coming in on a fractional level for that support or for those needs or for that guidance with no intention necessarily of leaving or not or replacing it. So that's the difference between interim and fractional.
Perfect. Yes, that is very informative, and we really appreciate your expertise and the knowledge that you bring to this. Having your perspective is just phenomenal. So thank you.
If I could say one more quick thing that's just really important. Of course. That typically fractional executives are more committed usually to the end goal because they are there as part of the company. They're not a temporary support. So naturally they're going to have more passion and more commitment to the situation. Typically, doesn't mean that interim CEOs can't fulfill great roles as well, but makes sense that if you're, with the company because you want to be, you're going to put that much more into it. So.
Absolutely. And anybody that is thinking about working as a fractional executive can also reach out to us. Let us know if you are looking for those opportunities and to really put your expertise into a variety of different companies. So that's really exciting. The next question I want to do is I'm going to shoot this over to Ben. Ben, could you possibly provide maybe some examples of how companies utilize CannabizTeam in this current market?
Yeah, I can say that, we really have the unique ability to be able to place employees in any state, both on a temporary and a permanent basis. We'll provide all of the onboarding and, the background checks. We'll do all of the badging that's specific for that particular state as well, and provide that all to the client. We've also had the opportunity recently over the last few years to even handle a lot of international based positions. So more specifically, we did some cultivation director positions for a company in Uruguay that John was a big part of. We also placed a retail director with a very large entertainment company in Thailand that has branched into the cannabis industry recently. And it was a pretty quick turnaround time considering we moved somebody across the world for that particular position. We also placed a director of retail for a company in Puerto Rico most recently as well, which technically isn't, I wouldn't necessarily say it's international, but it's out of the 50 states, right? And we actually just recently, just to kind of throw an example out there, we picked up a client probably about 2.5 weeks ago in St. Louis, Missouri. They reached out to us and they had a big need for bringing on about 10 to 11 cannabis trimmers for like a temp to perm project. and they gave us about a 4 or 5 day turnaround time. I think we had the meeting on a Wednesday, and they wanted people to start on a Monday, and we were able to get everybody in place and filled by Tuesday morning, which we're all pretty impressed with and pretty proud of at the end of the day. And they've continued to give us more opportunities kind of moving into this week and next week as well. So we placed a few on Monday. We have another few scheduled to start out on Monday next week as well in their garden tech positions. And then we've got some opportunities within packaging as well. So, that's moved along really quickly. They also have some opportunities on the permanent side too, which our permanent services side is handled. So they give us a data analyst role and also a fractional executive position to help to write some like kind of training manuals and SOPs. And we were able to assist with all of those permanent positions as well. So we're able to kind of utilize all of that.
That's great. I love how you're really showing that you can fill that immediate need in the market, whether it's temporary or permanent positions. So that's fantastic. The next question that I'm going to shoot over to Liesl. Do you possibly have any suggestions on what to do when employers do have to lay off employees?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially now. I think a lot of companies are facing some headwinds and having to make some tough decisions to lay people off. And there's definitely an option to give those people a softer landing, right? We offer outplacement services. It's very inexpensive, but for that, we work very closely with the people that unfortunately you have to part ways with, help them with updating their LinkedIn profiles, help them with resumes, interview skills. And very often we also have opportunities that they can transition to very quickly, both on a temporary or a direct hire basis. So if you are in that position where you have to lay off some employees based on some of the economic conditions right now, consider outplacement, because it does allow you to give those people a softer transition into another role, but it also creates goodwill for your company, right? And a lot of companies love the fact that their employees are very grateful for that additional support and the opportunity to transition into another role very quickly. Because we're specialized only in the cannabis industry and we work in all the verticals, and we have very deep relationships across the industry, very often we can help those employees get another job in the industry very quickly. So that's something to consider, and there's more information on our website on that as well.
Absolutely. I love how it shows the compassion for your employees, and really in the market, we have to prepare for everything. And that was excellent. So thank you so much for these questions, and to our speakers for providing their expertise and knowledge. I wanted to also share on this next slide, we really are focused on the cannabis industry and providing tips specific to our field. So for more information on the topic, just be sure to check out some of our resources that are listed here. We have a couple blogs really pointing out the items that we discussed today, the cost of a bad hire and staffing in a turbulent market. You can also visit our job board at CannabizTeam.com to see any available jobs. Lastly, our salary guide, always an excellent resource to show the range of job salaries, and it also provides more information and education on the overall cannabis market. And you can see all of the changes year to year. Again, if you do want any more information on any temporary or permanent staffing needs you might have, contact us. I know the website and email address are there listed over in the chat. You can contact us at contact@CannabizTeam.com. So I do just want to say now thank you for joining us today on this important topic. I love seeing everyone posting their LinkedIn. It's such a great way to connect with other professionals in the cannabis industry. Thank you to our speakers for dedicating your time, everyone that joined in today, and stay tuned for our next Cannabis Team webinar. Thanks for allowing us to educate you on this subject and be part of your cannabis professional journey. We'll see you next time.